Okay, so we'll call the meeting back to order and reconvene to open session. Joe, would you like to give us a brief report out of closed session?
Certainly. On item 4A, it was motioned by Diane and seconded by Paula and approved by a vote of 5-0 to approve an early retirement incentive, and no action was taken on item B.
Okay. Let's do a flag salute. Mr. Chavez, please.
Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're looking for item number 8, summer maintenance project report.
All right. So there was a pretty extensive list that was provided as a part of the board packet. Terry and his crew worked really hard over the summer, and we really appreciate all that they have done there. They're still working hard. We'll be probably all the way well past the time that school starts, but they're trying to get everything in shape and get all the updates done. But you can see they've done quite a bit. They're still going to be working on the science rooms at the high school to get them done. Unfortunately, the incident we had at Brookside where we had to replace the floor and then they had to keep going back 3 or 4 times in that west wing really set them back this summer. And so that's one that we're really pushing. So unfortunately, that might not be completed before the start of school. And Terry's going to be pushing. I think he was finishing the bathroom at Bechtel today. So that project should be done. And that was an access issue. And so his crew is jumping on that along with all the things teachers notice as they come back to school. You know, there's different issues that might have happened over the summer or things that need attention. Mostly the HVAC units right now, we've been getting probably 1 or 2 a day that need some kind of attention. Sometimes it's just a reset or whatever, but you know. But all in all, they did a really great job at the high school. Some of the big things, of course, our roofs are almost done. They're working on the breezeway that connects the main wing to the cafeteria, and they found some issues there. So there will likely be a change order that has to come in there just because the water was pooling in one particular place that caused some rot through and some dry rot around. So we'll have more details on that hopefully next week. We should have our everything ready for our pool bubble to go in. He's getting those pieces together. Our parking lot, they did the chalk lines for the lines to outline today. So they should be striping hopefully tomorrow to get that project completed, except for the piece that attaches directly to the cafeteria, the accessible parking spot. We're still waiting on DSA approval for that. So if you look, there's that one tiny strip right by the cafeteria that's not done. As soon as we get DSA approval, they'll pour that. Because remember, that has to be a level concrete piece there. Let's see. At Brookside, again, emergencies repairs to room 20 is at the top of his list there because that took them a lot longer than anticipated. They had to pull out an entire section of floor, plumbing, everything. Then the water wasn't working right when they went back. We have almost all of our portables at Brookside have some new HVAC systems. So that's pretty exciting that there's that opportunity that have great air circulation in those places, in those rooms, and those barred units, when they get replaced, it makes a huge difference there. At Blosser, we've had the water line repairs for the fire sprinkler and fire alarm upgrade. So now our fire alarm there will actually tie into the system, which is a really good thing if a fire happens to break out in the middle of the night or something, that it will actually call the fire department. As before, it was just, it would start going off and hopefully a neighbor would look and be able to call. So that's not the best situation for us there. We have some additional HVAC units that were installed there, and some other pieces there. At Spectral Grove, we've had the new roofs on the permanent buildings. The windows there, Maria can attest to how wonderful the windows. They look really good if you haven't had a chance to get by and see them.
All that sun and hotness is just nice and cool.
And district-wide, of course, the hydration stations were installed based off that grant. And we have the ultra daylight LED. We don't actually have them on in here right now, but any place in the district that had the older lights, they switched over to the LED, so they're really nice and bright in the classrooms now. And they did the solar panel cleaning, and like I said, we will be looking at upgrades to the solar panels as far as some of the equipment on there, seeing if that's viable or not to increase our output and save us some more money on that. And again, like I say, their dedication to our students is much appreciated, and they're excited that they're starting to see some fruits of all the efforts they've got, getting some traction and really making that, you're starting to see really visible things with our facilities improving. And so we really appreciate all their hard work and all the support from our community around that.
So I have a question. Some of this was done by what we paid for with contractors from outside, right?
Correct.
And like all the flooring and things like that. So what this really is, this doesn't really talk about maintenance department, but just the in general things, some are from the bond and some from all over.
Correct. Yeah, these are all of
Okay,
the
it's just
facilities
kind of
types updates that we've had.
Okay.
And I mean, to a certain extent, the maintenance department does supervise those and have some input and manage the contracts and things. So there's some involvement, and other things in here was completely our maintenance department as well.
Okay. WTA comments. Is Tessa available? Tessa out there? Is there somebody for WTA? Okay, we'll move on to Dan at CSEA.
I'm here. Hello, everyone. It's been, as Joe said, it's been a busy summer for my department. It's actually quite fruitful to see a lot of the improvements. I think they're real beneficial to the structures. Everybody's been busy with summer programs. We have our food services have been busy. Everybody's been, quite at it. I do have, it's on a screen share now, this little thing I came up with a long time ago, but I actually put numbers to it. It's basically ratios and numbers. It's what I call the Willits Unified Universe. Basically, you have a sun, it's the district's office, and all the school sites are planets that rotate around the sun. And in this drawing, each planet has a number on it, and that's the actual population of that planet as far as students and staff. And then you have a comet that zooms through our solar system called transportation, and they just go everywhere. They do whatever they're asked to do, and they just bounce around within our own universe and never leave it. And then circling all the planets, you have maintenance department and IT, and they're kind of responsible for keeping all the planets in their orbit around the DO and trying to make sure all those populations are, kind of getting along and the facilities are good and all that other stuff. And on the bottom part, I just have a bunch of numbers and ratios I put together. On the left, just one example is WTA has the one teacher to anywhere from 24 to 40 students. On the CSEA side, just on the top, there's 2 custodians per site. So each custodian or 2 custodians are the responsibility of the cleanup for each site, which the numbers of the sites are 298 population, 363, and so forth. So their tasks are, they're quite large for the population that they have to service. We have 2 grounds crew, and they're responsible for 6 sites. That's the outlying planets of Sanhedrin and Sherwood too. And they get help every now and then from the maintenance staff when things get really bad. So we try to help out where we can. Then we have food services. Typically there's 2 to 3 people in food services, and they service the whole school with food several times a day. Now, some sites, all of the people don't eat there, but some sites, all of the people do eat there. So it's kind of in and out. And they do, and they send food out to travel up to the satellite communities of Sanhedrin and Sherwood. And then you have the secretaries at sites. There's either 1, 2, or 3, and they have to serve the same population of people because there's needs from students. There's needs from, actually there's more because we have to put the public in there too. So those numbers rise a bit. Then you have transportation, and they service the entire district. Even though their numbers aren't the entire district, they are mobile and help out everywhere anybody needs help if we can provide it. Then we have 3 maintenance that kind of run in that little satellite that tries to keep it all together. And we're kind of responsible for 1,674 as a population and all of the district property. No matter what it is, we're responsible for working with that stuff and trying to keep it running properly. And then you have IT on the outside, and a guess is they're keeping track of like 2,900 district devices. That's everything from Chromebooks to desktops to laptops to screens to videos to switches to cameras to servers to blades, racks, everything, wires, phones, anything that is a gizmo, they're in charge of. So there's actually, quite a bit of stuff in there that a lot of the folks do. And then on top of that, we have things that come in and out called the general public and facility uses. And then we have traveling sports that come here. So the numbers fluctuate, but everybody's doing a good job at making it work. And these numbers may not be exact, but they're really close to what the populations are. And I just think with these ratios, it kind of shows what the classified staff is up against and the staffing that we have to try to make it possible. And the staff does a really good job at it. They're stretched thin in some cases, and we could use more, but that's a whole nother thing we have to talk about with the district office. And I just want to make sure it's good to realize what everybody does and just kind of put it into a number perspective along with all the other things that are done. And after that, I think that I do have a meeting with Joe coming up. We're going to be talking about some of the new COVID protocols from the state and issues like that from the health department. So we're going to work through those and we'll hopefully move on from that. And then we're looking forward to have all the little kids and screamy mimes running around and see if we can get some education rolling again. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. I love your chart. It's really, your graphic. It's great.
It's been on the wall since the 3rd month I was here. I figured it out.
We're at board comments. Let's start over here with Jeannie.
Oh, okay. So I appreciate everything that everybody has done is doing this month to get ready for the school year and to deal with whiplash according to directions that are coming from the county health officer, the county schools, the state, State Board of Education, the State Health Department. It's a real, we're all suffering from whiplash, and we just sort of have to go with the flow, and I appreciate what that's requiring of everybody. And that's all that comes to mind right now.
Thank you.
I know I had something else, but I can't think of what it was.
Chime in when you remember. Diane.
Welcome back, teachers. I know you're getting ready in your classrooms, and thank you, janitors and custodians and the maintenance department for getting everything ready when we start school. Brookside and Blosser are working with the new reading phonics program. So that's a good, I'm looking forward to that one. And we do have our, breakfast together for the whole school district. So that'll be on the 19th or the 18th?
The
Next Tuesday.
17th.
Yeah, 17th, that's it. Yeah, so that's about it right there.
Robert.
Yes, I just want to thank everyone for all the hard work they've done over the summer and the hard work yet to come. And I'm excited about this year, and I best wishes to everyone. And I'm sure we'll have a fantastic year, regardless of masks or
Yeah.
what we're doing out there. But thank you, everyone.
Paula.
Well, I have to ditto pretty much everything that's been said. I was really impressed with the summer schools this year. I was especially impressed with Nuestra Alianza. And I think my only concern at this minute is about the disinfecting of our classrooms, if that's going to become an issue. And other than that, yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone on the 17th. And I do believe also it should be a really exciting and interesting school year.
I remember what else I was going to say. I was going to thank Maria again for always being willing to communicate to the board, to make the effort to communicate to the board. And I learned more about Bethel Grove in one of Maria's communications before a board meeting than I do from any on any of the other sites. It's a really clear reading Maria's communications, what's going on at Bethel Grove, and I really appreciate it.
As do I. I think most of us do get some significant value out of your reports. I can echo the same sentiments from everybody else. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you to everybody that's worked so hard through the summer to basically get many of our bond projects moved along. Many of them are nearing completion, and hopefully those things pay dividends as we move forward. I'm looking forward to having a more normal school year, although I have to admit that with respect to what's going on with COVID right now, it's off to a less than ideal start. And I'm sorry to say that, but hopefully this too will pass, and quickly. I'll pass that over to Joe.
All right. So as you can imagine, my first 6 weeks has kind of been a whirlwind, but I feel like I've jumped in both feet and trying to get a handle on things. So I appreciate all the board support. I think I've met with all of you at some point and just had some good conversation and getting some good idea of direction and needs. I've also met with a lot of the community and staff, and so those have been really great conversations too. So I feel really up to speed on a lot of what's going on, and I'm sure I'll find all those things that I don't know yet, but at least I know what I know, even if I don't know what I don't know just yet. We are still facing some challenges in staffing. While we have most positions filled, we still have some key positions that need personnel. We have a special education teacher position at Willits High School. We're still advertising for independent study teacher. We think we can figure out some pieces to help us out with that, but just in case our numbers come in higher than what we're anticipating right now. We still have our custodial positions and a maintenance position. So we will continue to recruit in that vein, and hopefully we can get some folks in, because like Paula, I do have some concerns about making sure that we can adequately take care of the sanitation of the facility and everything. Our welcome back breakfast for the staff might be modified. At this point, I'm planning to have the program outside. I asked Christy about the idea of maybe doing grab and go as opposed to having all of our staff in one place, eating unmasked, coming back from summer vacation. It just seems like a lot of factors that could stack up to be not the greatest if we have an exposure of some sort at that point. And so it will look a little different than it has in the past, but I think that's just kind of where we are right now. Our Brookside and Blosser staffs are really ready to implement the reading program that we've started out. So they're starting out really strong. We've got some additional reading intervention set up this year, in addition to some really great best first instruction in the classroom. At Brookside, we have the phonics program, remember, that we adopted is just K2 for phonics. And then there's the intervention program that addresses some of those issues as well, all the way through 5th grade. But it really hammers the phonics and the K2 as a part of the program. So they'll receive, their teachers there will receive training on that next week. We also have 3 teachers who will be providing intervention services, really targeting towards 1st grade students for 4 days a week at about 40 minutes per day for those students who are our highest needs kiddos. We'll also have teachers and aides who are working at all grade levels in small groups and really trying to maximize that reading time in the classroom as well. We will have our assessments administered throughout the district every 6 to 8 weeks to monitor our progress, adjust those groups, make sure that we're hitting the groups appropriately, changing them up if a student's really making a lot of progress, that they can go to that next higher level if that's what they need. Make sure that we're staying fairly responsive and actually really get some great data around that as well. So I look forward to being able to bring some updates to you as we move along through the implementation of this, because I think that'll be really powerful when we can start to show that growth that we're seeing in our students, and we know we will see. At Blosser, really Blosser and Brookside are working really tightly together on this project. They're training together. They're trying to build some collaborations between their teachers to really have that full K-5 understanding of this is where we're starting in the program to end up, you know, by the time they're in the third grade, hopefully 5th grade for sure. We've got a comprehensive program that has taken them through, made sure that we're hitting their intervention needs, and that we're addressing, that we have all our students leaving Blosser ready to read, or not ready to read, rather, able to read at grade level, as many students as we possibly can, and if not, that we've identified that group so that we know what interventions we can put in place as they move to Beckville. Currently, though, the one hitch in our program is that we were kind of early adopters about the intervention program through Benchmark, and so our materials are being printed as we speak. They should be shipped to us hopefully by the early September is what we're hearing at this point. So I'm hoping it's one of those situations where they're promising later and it shows up earlier, but unfortunately that's as quick as they could get it to us with the orders that we placed, and it being a brand new program. At Beckville Grove, a large portion of the staff participated in the AVID training over the summer. So I think that's going to have a huge impact. That's as much about culture as it is the socio-emotional and the really just ensuring that we're providing great services to our kids in academics as well. So I'm excited about seeing that program in action. The Beckville Grove staff will also be participating in training using their curriculum materials for ELA and math next week as well. So I'm excited to see how that progresses. Here at the high school, the things that they're most happy about right now is, of course, the new parking lot out front looks really great. So I was talking to Mike, and we already had somebody zooming through. We're like, oh, great. We're gonna have to look at maybe, you know, speed bumps or something like that in there, or something to slow folks down, because that was unsafe, unfortunately. But we have air conditioning in the main hall for the first time ever. So that's pretty exciting. We have a new course going in ag mechanics fabrication. That'll be a part of our ag mechanics pathway. So that's exciting that we've got some new equipment in to support that as well. We've got American Sign Language that will be taught as a foreign language class as well. So that's really exciting opportunities for our kiddos there. The schedule as it's set up with the trimesters right now is, and Mike's worked it so that we have an additional 4,320 instructional minutes in math and ELA for students. So if a student isn't successful in say the first trimester, there's a time for them to be able to make that learning up and make sure that they're leaving our schools with the skills that we expect them to be able to. And so that's really, he's maximizing that, and he kind of feels like he's finally in that place where he's got this figured out, and we've got some good things happening there. Our first home football game will be August 27th, and volleyball, cross country, and soccer are all in full swing as well. Volleyball and soccer will be competing most Tuesdays and Thursdays, so we'll get some information out to you with some calendars on that. But if you're interested in those sports, that's when that'll happen. At Sanhedrin, we're excited about, they're going to be hosting and really operating our independent study program for our 9th through 12th graders. And up at Sherwood, we had our Fosse parents, the Friends of Sherwood School, come in and do a cleanup as they have annually done for years. So that happened this past Saturday. So they got things kind of getting ready for the kiddos to come back up there. And that was a really good event. Sherwood will also be the school of record for our independent study program for our TK through 8. And looking forward to Mackenzie leading that school and to having Marion leading Sanhedrin. So I think those will be really positive changes. They've jumped in both feet and are feeling really strong about moving into those roles. And that's all I have. Sorry, that was a lot.
Have we talked about the EL program? Where do we stand with that?
EL program, we are kind of hitting the ground floor with that, and that's our next step as we get the reading training in place with the intervention, looking at how that can be a part of how the EL program within that's part of that training next week that they have. This is the first day of training that we have with them. We actually purchased 3 days of training. So what we're hoping to be able to do is we got one dedicated day that's a full day training, a part day on the intervention, and then with our early release Tuesdays, they're going to be filling in and having virtual trainings to kind of go step by step into each of those elements, EL being a part of that as well. So there'll be more coming on EL soon though. That's our next.
But in terms of instructors, teachers for EL, have we filled those roles?
No, we have not.
So budget wise, I believe the last thing we had discussed at budget adoption was not incorporating separate EL pullout teacher positions, but that the focus with the EL committee was going to be on professional development for a majority of staff. Was that a correct understanding for those who are involved?
I'd have to defer.
Maria's nodding yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's where we're starting, but we were also looking at the idea of having some coaching specifically in EL strategies and supports. So currently, one of our coaches will be Molly Snyder, who is very well versed in those EL strategies. It's been my direction to her that those strategies should be high impact for both reading and for our ELs, which typically align fairly well with each other in those programs. And so we will definitely have a focus in there on that, but I'll bring more information back to you at our next meeting around that as well.
So Joe, just to make sure I'm understanding correctly from a budget perspective, the intention would be that it would be incorporated into those 5 positions we identified as part of the reading plan, but they would also be used with EL. It's not over and above those FTEs. Is that
correct? Now, because we haven't even filled those FTE, all of those positions with qualified staff. And so we will continue to develop this and continue to meet. And I believe Maria had something to add there as well. Sorry.
Can you speak up a little, Maria?
Oh, I don't know about the other side, but we have English language development.
But that doesn't happen at the elementary schools. They're considered, teachers will be doing the additional or the same, but, you know, enhanced type of learning. And we don't have any Spanish speaking teachers that are going to be billed for, or their specific job or focus are going to be the kids that are going to require that, or their families. We had 2 aides, I don't know if they still exist, but,
Yes.
okay, and they're only being liaisons. They are not working in classrooms with kids. And for my way of thinking, that's still a really big concern. I don't trust at all that we're gonna do real well if we don't modify our focus. I mean, I understand you can't find any qualified employees, but then I just truly believe that's something that, you know, tomorrow get started that you'll work or steal or whatever you can do.
Do everything we can to address that.
I trust you. I think.
Okay. Anything further?
Nope, that's everything I had.
Okay, so we're at public comments for anything that's on the agenda or anything not on the agenda. So anybody wishing to be heard by the board shall first be recognized by the president, shall then proceed to comment as briefly as subject permits. In general, individual speakers will be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda or non-agenda item, and the board will limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. So anybody out there like to address the board?
I would. Suzanne Matheson.
All right, Suzanne, go right ahead.
Hi, and is now the time to talk about my questions about reopening, or should I do that when reopening is on the agenda as item I?
You're welcome. Right now is public comment time. So
Perfect.
please.
All right. So I am delighted that we are going back to school full time. Nothing makes me happier. My one concern is about masking. I'm concerned that that students will be, the elementary students, none of whom are vaccinated, will be playing outside without their masks on. And it was so successful last year with the elementary students being able to go outside without their masks. I would like to urge you to consider, until this very scary Delta variant, which is so much more contagious than the Alpha variant that we had last spring, that until the Delta variant is over, that you temporarily modify your reopening to have the students masked when they play outside, the same way that the students on the sports teams are masked. That's my first concern. And my second concern is about eating, and that I would encourage you not to have the students eat in the cafeteria. It's like going into a restaurant. And during this Delta time, again, modify your reopening orders to have the students eat outside and well-spaced. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Anybody else?
Are you doing just the digital right now?
We are doing whoever.
I'll take that.
Be my guest.
So I just want to, my name's Brian Bowles. I wanted to see if I could check in while it's we're able to do it in person still. And I wanted to say it was nice being able to meet with our new superintendent, Joe Aldrich. I've met with him twice already. And I think we've tackled a lot of ground and covered a lot of ground in both conversations that we've had. So very optimistic and appreciative of the impact so far. We are dealing with some interesting times with the variant spreading in our community. It's already been affecting our sports and our ability to practice as a whole. We've been getting it based on the protocols we've had in place. I think that I've got a lot of feedback from parents and staff requesting more of a streamlined protocol that they can interact with. I think that is actually going to be discussed and voted on today as well. So I look forward to helping and being a part of that as well. So, thank you, Mr. Aldridge, and thank you, board, for tackling what will be another interesting beginning of the school year.
Anybody else out in the Zoom world interested in addressing the board? Go ahead, Paula.
There are two things. One, I just really appreciate that public comments is put up so high as opposed to the last thing. I wanted to make sure that was clear. And I also wanted to say that I've appreciated my meetings with Mr. Aldridge, and I just really think that the district will go in a good direction, and I can kind of trust what's going to happen. And for me, that's a really big deal. So thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else out in the Zoom world want to address the board? When we close public comment will be closed for the meeting. So if you have something you'd like to bring up, please bring it up now. Hearing nothing, we'll close public comment and move on. We're at the consent agenda. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
And Jeannie. Moved and seconded. Is there a discussion on the consent agenda?
I did want to say, I went and talked to Joe because I was concerned about this. I don't remember where it was now. I have it in my notes. But there was an expenditure for the Committee for Children's Second Step Digital Program, which is an SEL program, social emotional learning program. And I looked it up, and it's a digital online program for social emotional learning. And I went and talked to Joe. I said, who learns social emotional skills from interacting with a screen? It really concerned me. And he assured me that the class does it all at once. They're not, it's not one kid sitting in front of a computer all by himself. There's the teacher still leading the instruction, and but the kids are answering things on a screen, but there's still instruction from a real person, and there's interaction among the kids. So anyway, I was concerned. I thought I learned social emotional skills from a computer screen. So anyway, thanks.
Any other discussion on the consent agenda? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We're at item C, approval of a provisional internship permit, also known as a PIP, for Christian Jensen, multiple subject certificated teacher at elementary grades.
And so this will allow us to employ someone who isn't fully credentialed in that area to fill in our elementary grade levels. This will be 5th grade, I believe. And I'm putting a concerted effort into supporting those teachers this year. I want to have meetings with them that steps outside of the evaluation process so that I can just touch base and make sure that they have what they need to be successful, because I know how challenging it is to be in that situation where trying to learn things and teach and move through all those processes all at the same time. The principals are great with that as well, but sometimes just having that ear outside the building, so to speak, might be a good opportunity for some of them as well.
Do PIPs get a mentor teacher assigned to them as well?
Yes, we're making sure all of our interns or anyone that they have the availability of and that's something I know Brian and I had talked about with the contract, that we might have to tweak the language around that a little bit just to make sure that that's memorialized in there, but that's a part of Ed Code at this point, as well as that they have that mentor support for any of these types of permits. So
is there a motion to approve item C?
I move that we approve item C.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Yes.
Good. Item D, approval of provisional internship permit for Elena Warren, early childhood special education teacher.
And just a thought with her, it's very important that we support having early childhood special education folks. It's a fairly new credential. I mean, it's been in the last few years, but it used to be an authorization. Now they've made it a credential, kind of moved it around a little bit. And so as we move to universal TK, we're going to have more and more of a need, and TK is considered early childhood ed and not a part of the K-12 credential for special education teachers. So it becomes all the more important to have that credentialed person on board. So growing our own and really supporting a person in this situation is a good plan for us.
So TK in and of itself is considered special education?
No, I'm sorry. It's considered early childhood education. And as we move to a universal TK, which will be happening over the next 4 years, that we slowly bring on all 4-year-olds will be eligible for TK. That with that change, we'll have more special education needs that are just inherently there.
Got it.
So
motion to approve item D.
I'll move to approve item D.
Second,
I'll second.
the motion to second, is there further discussion?
Now, because this was a change from just a certificate down to a, they need this for, it's an education document. Okay,
yes.
Right, so this is a PIP.
yeah.
Any other discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Oh. We're at item E, approval of the 45-day budget revision.
And so a 45-day budget revision is required whenever we have a significant change between adopted budget and what the legislators actually approved. And so because of everything they've added on this year, that was necessary. So I'll let Nikki take that away.
And if you'd like to let me do a screen share, I can put some information up for those who are zooming in.
We've got control of screen share. Michelle's working on it.
Okay.
We'll have a little on-the-job training right here.
You should be able to.
It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
How about now?
Let me try. There we go. All right. Okay, so are you guys able to see it?
Yes.
Okay, so I put together a summary. There is also a document that was included in the board packet, which is just an updated version of our multi-year projection. But I wanted to highlight what things actually changed from when we did budget adoption. So that's what this summary is. I think it's a little bit easier to look at. And I did also approach this from a multi-year projection standpoint. So we're seeing it across the impacts of these changes across the 3 years. It is divided into unrestricted and restricted. There was an increase in the per ADA lottery revenue for both the unrestricted lottery as well as the restricted lottery. So we've incorporated that change into our revenue. There is the anticipation of the TK planning grant. This came on board as part of, I believe, the trailer bill language, along with the A to G completion improvement grant. So those are two new restricted revenue sources. I did for the A to G completion, you will see down in the expenditure component, we anticipate using some of those funds for an aid at the high school. So you can see across the 3 years that we would expect to have some expense related to that. And there will likely be other expenses that have not yet been determined. So we don't have that, all of the funding listed as an expenditure at this point. Some of it will fall into the restricted fund balance temporarily until the rest of those decisions are made, as well as the fact that the funding source is actually available until, I believe it's 25, 26. Is that correct, Joe?
That's correct. Yep.
So we anticipate, trying to spread the impact of those funds across the whole life of that grant. So I anticipate we would see additional expenses in those future years. In addition, there was a change to the Lcff funding. So we did see an increase on the unrestricted side for the concentration grant funding. And we are anticipating that will be used for bringing back 2 of our PE coordinators at the elementary level. I believe it's one at Brookside and one at Blosser. And then there were some changes. So state unemployment insurance, the rate typically for many years has been 0.05%. And due to impacts from COVID, at a time of adoption, the rate had gone up to 1.23%, which doesn't sound like a very large percentage, but if you look at what an increase that is from 0.05%, that's a very significant increase to our statutory benefit expense. And fortunately, the state did provide a little bit of relief, and now the final adopted rate is actually 0.5. Still a significant increase from our prior rate, but certainly better than the 1.23 that we were anticipating as of June. So we are now factoring in some lower statutory benefits on both the unrestricted and restricted sides in relation to that change. On the flip side, the STRS rate that we had been provided as a projection to use as of June was 18% for the 2 out years, so 22-23 and 23-24. And in fact, now we're being told that that will be 19.1%. So you can see that we anticipate some additional expense related to that. So unfortunately, that does offset a lot of that savings that we were seeing from the state unemployment rate reduction. We then see obviously the statutory benefits related to the PE aides as well as the high school aid. And in addition, we have incorporated some use, or it looks like full use really, of the TK planning grant. And right now we have that shown as a capital outlay expense. It's so early. We just received information about this. Not totally sure if it will end up fully being capital expense, but for right now, that seemed the logical place to show it in the budget. And I'll keep you updated at first interim if that changes. So then down at the bottom here, what I did, you can see both on the unrestricted side and the restricted side, I showed the total expenditure changes. So I have incorporated those together. Here's the total changes to restricted and unrestricted expenditures. And then the impact, when you change your expenditures, then it does impact your calculation for your reserve. So the additional amount that would go into the reserve. Now, I do want to point out on the document that is the actual multi-year projection, just a reminder that it's not the official SACS form, which is what gets uploaded to the state when we do our adoptions as well as our interim revisions. And so we have the flexibility to format it a certain way. And you'll see on that other worksheet that the policy that we had been discussing previously related to the reserve, where we say, here's our total expenditures, we take out any significant one-time funds over a certain threshold so that it does not unduly sway that number. And then we apply that percentage that we had discussed, I believe was 17%. And in doing that full calculation, that puts us over what's actually available in the fund balance for 22, 23, and 23, 24, I believe it is. And so I go ahead and show that so we can see how far over we are. Now, when we submit to the state clear, we can't have a negative unassigned fund balance, and we wouldn't actually do that. But it's really just a planning tool as we look into the future to see like how far over we would be in terms of having enough in our fund balance to meet the reserve as well as our other obligations. So I think that pretty well sums everything up. Does the board have any questions?
Other than, it looks like what you're basically saying is that we have an additional $400,000 in expenses theoretically over the next 3 years.
That is correct, but we're also seeing up at the top here that that's because we did receive some additional sources of revenue from this state. So some of these expenditures tie back directly to some funding sources.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you.
Was that in the packet?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep, it's in there.
For the comment.
Is there a motion to approve the 45-day budget review?
I move that we approve the 45 day budget revision changes.
And is there a second?
I second it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, now we are at item F, approval of the 2021 Con App.
Right, so the consolidated application provides us with funding in titles 1, 2, 3, and 4. These funds really are supplemental. Title 1 is for our economically disadvantaged. Title 2 is teacher improvement. Title 3 is for our English learners, and Title 4 is for innovative programs. And so they all supplement our core program and ensure that our students need supports to overcome potential barriers to their education. So we have this, and then we have for 2021, and then it starts the process all over again for 21, 22 is the next item. So they kind of run together there. It's a pretty involved process, and this year we're trying to make sure we dot all our I's and cross all our T's, because in April we will have a federal monitoring visit where they look specifically into all of these things. So you might see a little more activity this year with federal programs as we clean up and get ready for that audit coming up in April.
So is this audit something that happens every few years, or is it something special?
You get kind of chosen randomly
Oh, okay.
every few years. Like it'll come up and they'll say, oh, it's Mendocino County's turn, and we'll pick these 2 districts.
Okay.
And so as long as we do well, then we won't be up again for some time, usually 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. So.
Thanks. Is there a motion to approve item F?
I'll move to approve item F.
Is there a second? This, my assumption is this is all in line with the LCAP.
Correct. Yes. In fact, we use input from the LCAP to drive how this gets budgeted as well. So.
Any other further discussion of item F? We'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are. Oh, we separated out into both.
We did.
Approval of the 21-22 Con App. Again, it's in line with the LCAP.
It is. Yes.
So a motion to approve item G.
I'll move to approve item G.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Is there further discussion?
I had a question. When it comes to the, the budgets, and it talks about like on the Title III Immigrant Student Program sub grants, and then it says If there are any supplies or whatever, where did I see that? Oh, I guess it was on the other one. Well, either way. When we
Yes,
haven't.
It's in two separate years. So they're-
Yeah, that's why I'm.
Yeah, it looks really redundant from. one
This
to
is
the
what-
other.
It sort of does, only this one's bigger this time.
This is one that's already happened.
Yeah.
So what's interesting with the CONAP is that they incorporate into one process both an application and plan for future use as well as expenditure on past use. And the expenditures also are very redundant because they'll have, for instance, I think it's Title III where they'll have you do a 12-month expenditure report, a 24 and a 27-month, something like that. It's like multiple times you're reporting on that use. And so in a given CONAP, you'll see multiple fiscal years represented of prior expenditures and sort of continuous updates on a given fiscal year.
Okay, well, thanks. My other question, since I can't find the first one, is that it never shows any kind of administrative funds coming from that program. Is that always going to be that way, or is that just the last couple of years, or what's happening on
I would defer to Nikki on that.
that?
So I think Title I is the only program where we charge any direct so there's two issues I will say. So direct administrative expense and indirect, which many of our programs were allowed to charge indirect expense. And we typically do against all of our title programs, but Title I is the only one where we have traditionally done any direct administrative expense. The other funding sources, they're smaller, and it can be a little bit piecemeal trying to use it that way. So instead, we direct the use of those funds towards direct services.
Okay, so that means that you're paying for aides or whomever else, even though it's.
Yes, it depends on the source. Typically, so for Title III, it could be teacher salary or aide salary or professional development, things of that nature.
Okay, so for example, this year, there's going to be professional development for English learners,
Correct.
for teachers of English.
Correct. Yeah, so previously we did have teacher salary there. And as we discussed earlier, during 2021, we did not have those same EL positions that we had had prior to that. So we did not use that allocation. We didn't use, I mean, there was a tiny bit of professional development, but very little in 2021. And so most of the funding from that year is carrying over. So when we're looking at our actual use, we're going to be using probably our carryover towards some professional development, as well as potentially some of the current year, I believe we had towards direct services like the coach position or something along those lines. So it was a combination. I think the anticipation for 21-22 is a combination of part of coach position and professional development for all staff.
Okay. Any other questions? Been motion and seconded. We'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving the 21-22 CONAP, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are at item H, approval of contract with Mendocino County Youth Project.
All right, so our contract with Mendocino County Youth Project, we're still working to define what exactly the site needs are, but I've had them connect with our administrators. The administration kind of knows the menu of services that are available. And we're looking, I've got to reach out to them. We'd like to ensure that we get Sherwood included as a part of, because they don't have a dedicated counselor. And so they can get some counseling or some of that type of service provided as well. We're looking at them primarily focusing with our middle and high school students. That's really where their wheelhouse is, but also providing some of those more social work as far as direct services to students with our middle and high school. more social work type, working with families, community type situations for our younger kids, just because that's more impactful. While also being able to provide, if we have any individual student in crisis, we've got some ways to make referrals to them, either by directly placing a phone call or referral forms, that kind of thing, to ensure that we can maximize their 32 hours in the district every week and make sure that we can capitalize on that as much as we can.
Are these folks going to be on site?
They will be, yes. They are moving over, I mean, assuming that COVID protocols allow us to, but yes, we would consider them to be service providers that would be on site.
Is there a motion to approve? Item H.
I move that we approve item H, the contract with Mendocino County Youth Project.
And second,
I second it.
any further discussion? This is one of those things we've had in the works for some time. That's moving forward.
I think it's really exciting that students and families are going to have some support.
Yes, absolutely. Further comments? Call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries. And we are at item I, approval of the COVID safety plan.
I've already given the board an updated version of this, but just for our audience. And so this plan is up to date as of this morning with the new order from the governor around things. Still have to negotiate some of those impacts with our units. And so I've reached out to both of them just to say, hey, this is a thing. How are we responding to that? And what can we do? So we'll engage with those conversations in the near future here to make sure that we do our due diligence on that part of things. Like I say, the biggest change that I made in here is adding the vaccinations in as they were, as was suggested, and then the language that came out this morning around either mandatory vaccinations or testing for staff who work at the schools. There's also a suggestion right now from the public health officer around testing for students. I'm trying to analyze our capacity to be able to do that, or as I was telling you, working with an outside company who can come in and provide us with the full spectrum of testing services if we can do that. It wouldn't be mandatory testing for students, it's just making it available if there's an issue, so that they don't have to necessarily get down to, say, Ukiah to go to the fairgrounds if they don't have a doctor in town or that kind of thing, to try to be more supportive. And then also to support our student athletes. If that becomes, we're not sure what the athletics guidelines are supposed to be. I'm hearing maybe something will come out on Saturday morning. But I haven't heard anything for sure around that. I know within the sports guidance, they're also going to include other extracurricular and co-curricular activities. So they're going to address band, choir, drama, sports, kind of all in one document. But they say that they're trying to align that with what they put out for the school guidance as well. So I would expect that it will probably align pretty well with what we've got in the plan already. So,
Okay. So right now, we don't necessarily provide testing for students.
we provide it for some students, we provided it for athletics, but that guidance is shifting. So we're kind of in limbo with that.
I mean, we can't mandate testing for
Correct.
them. However, we don't necessarily provide even voluntary.
No, we provide some voluntary, if it, say New Western Alianza, we provided with them during summer. And I'm not sure what happened in the spring, but I'm just saying, as of this moment, yes, if there's an issue or symptoms, we will provide that test here, right? Because we can do the rapid test, so they can see within 15 minutes. And then we always follow that rapid test up. If it is positive, we say you have to go get the PCR test to confirm, because there can be some false positive with some different issues with that.
Right. Okay.
So.
And
But for adults, it's open at high school, right? It's
Correct. We're going to be
volunteers.
offering testing on Mondays and Wednesdays from 3 to 4 in the foyer of the cafeteria, or the gym rather. So we will have a regular set schedule for that for sort of the surveillance pieces. But we'll also have folks trained at every site and at the district office as well to ensure that we can respond if there's a need at a, if we have a potential exposure somewhere or something and need to respond, we have a team that can do that pretty much everywhere.
With respect to the COVID safety plan, have we scheduled time for professional development for all of our staff?
That should be built in with the principals, but I'm going to double check that in their schedules. But each of them have, as a part of their back to school planning, their longer staff meetings that they have with their staff directly. That's part of what they're expected to cover. And so once we have this document, that'll give them a good basis to.
The other question I would throw out there is, obviously, just like last year when we dealt with COVID to begin with, the target keeps moving. Clearly, as of yesterday, for example, we did not have a mandate from the governor to have everyone vaccinated on that works here or submit to weekly testing. My assumption is that this safety plan will be updated as changes occur, and those updates shipped out to all the sites and people trained with those updates.
Correct.
Okay.
Trying to think if I can do video updates or something like that that can at least get consistent messaging out to everyone.
And so is there a motion to approve item I, the COVID safety plan?
I'm making a motion to approve.
Motion by Paula, who's got a second?
I'll second it.
Diane's got a second. Is there any further discussion of the COVID safety plan? I know I've read it in its entirety and provided some input, and hopefully everybody else has an opportunity to do the same. So anybody that actually reads this plan, please read the plan. If you see something in there that does not appear to be ideal, or you have a suggestion for an improvement, please get those via email, by phone call, stop in, visit the superintendent, but get that stuff on the table. We don't want to miss something that has the potential to have an impact on anyone here, particularly negative impact. So good suggestions are always welcome. No other comments on the safety plan? Call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We were at item J, approval of Almeida architectural contract.
Right, I think Don was on. This contract is to start the work for replacement of the west wing at Brookside. And so if we narrowly may be able to get everything in so that we could be ready to go in the summer to get that done next year. We're hoping that will all line up, but that's just hoping that all the stars are in the right place and everything gets through DSA. That's obviously our biggest issue. The other piece that we have to have done is some update on our geological study there as well. So I know Don's been working with SHN because they did the original study when we put in the solar panels there. It didn't quite go far enough for the west wing because obviously the location of the work was a little bit different. So they're going to do some extension on that, but some elements of that are able, so we'll be able to save a little money there on the project.
So there's two methodologies we're working here, correct? One was utilizing bond funds next year to replace those portables with portables.
Correct.
Whether they be secondhand portables from somewhere else or even possibly new portables. The new budget that came out from the governor basically came out with a information on the new TK rules that may put us at like 1 to 12 as being the ratio of teachers to students, which would of course possibly put us in need of more classroom space. That also came with a certain amount of money thrown at infrastructure for schools that don't have that space. Theoretically, we might be able to tap into that instead of utilizing just bond funds.
Correct.
But that's a matching grant, am I correct?
It is.
So my assumption with Mr. Almeida is that we're going down both paths.
We are, because we don't have to make that decision for a while yet. The soil study would still have to be done. All those sort of things have to be, all that groundwork has to be laid, so we can make that decision. Once we know whether we get the bond funding or not, he can kind of draw it up in both fashions.
Right, so one path would be portables. The other path would be, and the other path that's been thrown out there with this new budget is not for portables. It's for basically a stick-built
Correct.
construction, and which would, again, we'd use partial bond funds and apply for this grant.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. As long as we're moving down both.
Yes, we're kind of going parallel for a while, and we can, I think he was saying in the fall, probably late fall, we'll have to make a decision one way or the other, but we'll know better about those rules for the TK funding and if we can qualify it.
Got it. So clearly, we need to be ready to apply for that at its earliest opportunity in order to build it.
And he's already reached out and has those contacts with the state, so as soon as that application process is available, we'll be on it.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we've been fortunate grabbing some of these grants in the past. Hopefully, we'll be lucky again. Is there a motion to approve item J, Alameda's architectural contract?
I'll move to approve item J.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we are at item K, approval of Henry's change order. Doing some roofing.
So yeah, we had our change order. We found when we got to Bechtel, we had the same issue with the gas lines. At least this time we didn't break the gas line figuring it out. But it was the same style that was done at Brookside. So we had to have the same type of change order put in at that point. So,
Is there a motion to approve the Henry's change order?
I move that we approve Henry's change order.
And second?
I second it.
Motion and second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. The gas lines were way up on the roof and real visible, right?
yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. It didn't come to anyone's mind when they made up a contract for the pricing that was going to be an issue and would need to be fixed.
I think they thought because the architectural code now says that it's not a part of the roof, that it was set up differently in modern standards. At that point, it was just kind of mounted to the roof.
Oh,
So it should have been done differently by modern standards, so they didn't think to include that at that point. It's in a contract this size, that's not that unusual to find little things like that, so.
it just seemed really odd to me when I was curious. Thanks.
And I would bet we probably were a learning curve for them, and in the future, they'll probably be looking for those things on contracts, so.
Yeah, one would have thought they'd have seen that early on, when they actually bid.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my concern.
Did they get up on the roof and check it? That was my thing.
well, unless actually somebody reached down and grabbed one of those pipes and tried to lift it up, you wouldn't have known. Right. Because they just sit there. And now they won't.
Right.
Now they'll be attached.
Oh,
So, any other discussion on item K? None, call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approval of the WTA MOU item L.
So this MOU was to settle a matter before PERB, the Public Employee Relations Board. And so we were able to come to an amicable solution there that was seemed reasonable to all parties. And the overall cost for the district will be about $8,000 is what we estimate. Per the contract, we'll have teachers weigh in if they think that they're not on the list, but I think I was pretty comprehensive as I went through, and Brian, I'll get you the list later on. So, and I have that available for the board as well.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve item L?
I make a motion to approve.
A second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we're at item M, approval of resolution 2021-22-1 credential assignment.
And so this just recognizes that there are multiple avenues to which we can use local assignment options to place teachers, and allows us some additional flexibility when we're hiring, to know that these are options and that the board generally approves of that. Each one will be brought before you as we have with the others on the agenda this evening.
And these talk about credentialed teachers, right? Just credentials that don't happen to necessarily fit
Correct.
what the request is for.
Correct, which would be our preference in situations, rather than going out and getting someone who's doesn't have a credential at all.
Okay, well, I think it was the second or third that kind of made me wonder, little bullet. The bottom 4 or 5 were real clear to me. It's just that there were a couple and I had to kind of wonder. But that's good, thanks.
Okay, is there a motion to approve item M?
I'll move to approve item M.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and seconded. Any further discussion of item M? So it's a resolution, so we'll do a roll call vote for item resolution 21-22-1 credential assignment. Jeannie,
Aye.
Diane,
Aye.
Robert,
Aye.
Paula,
Aye.
myself, aye. We are at first reads of item N. And there are quite a few of them in there. There is one that we'll actually have to take specific action on. It is the one for administering medications around medical cannabis.
Correct.
So please read that one, and especially, but all the rest of them are just great reading before bed.
Yeah, they're all pretty straightforward. A lot of he, she changed to a really awkwardly worded gender neutral statement. I don't know why they didn't just switch to they. It seems more socially acceptable, but
Yeah, and a couple of them they've actually rescinded or removed because they changed language so much.
Correct.
Include them somewhere else, but all good. It's just housekeeping, administrative housekeeping.
yes. And then the board policy 6158 for independent study is something that we are required by law to pass before the 30th day of instruction. So I'll come back in September. But that's one we absolutely have to consider. If there's some reason that we couldn't consider the other ones, just keep that in the back of your mind that that one does have to be by law approved, or we lose apportionment through independent study. So
And this is based on the new independent study requirements?
yes, it is.
Okay.
And so there may be some additional changes. This was an early version. And so if I have those, I will share that out and we'll get that out to everyone.
So there's been some interesting catch-22 stuff with around the mask mandate and independent study. We've discussed it a little bit. Has there been any movement along those lines?
No, not really. Everything has stayed pretty static with that. We have some folks who, if right now the choice is if a student doesn't wish to mask at school, then their choice is they're making the choice to go to independent study at that point. Is the way that I've heard it legally explained at this point. So there's not really any wiggle room from I ran it through our legal team. They said I had someone asking about a religious exemption. That's not valid under the law. It would be required to then go to independent study at that point.
So
My
what-
understanding, we can't force anybody to go on independent study, so that seems to be a contradiction to me.
It would appear that way, but from a legal standpoint, that's how it's being interpreted at this point. Is the choice not to wear a mask is the choice then to go to independent study and engage in that program.
But somebody on independent study that chooses to come back to campus and refuses to wear a mask, they're simply not going to be admitted to campus.
Correct.
Your choices are independent study or wear a mask.
Correct. As of this time, that's subject to change as we get more vaccinations out there for students. And they're hoping that by early October, we might have something approved in that vein, fully approved. So
We are at item O, unless there's any further discussion on item N, first read
Do you need direction on the cannabis issue?
Yes, is there any discussion around that or any direction that the board wishes to issue?
I believe,
My suggestion is option 2.
yeah, first, there are two options. One is to allow the administration of cannabis medications either by a parent or by staff, or we could allow it just by parent or guardian. The other option is based on the fact that cannabis is still federally illegal, that the board can choose to not allow cannabis on the campus in any form, and even administered as a medication. That is option 2. I know the superintendent is suggesting that option 2 is probably the better way to go. I know that the recommendation with respect to the policy is that we run it by legal person, or by our legal team. CSBA is recommending that each district run it by their own legal and determine whether or not one option or the other is the best for that particular district. So we'll get the opportunity to make that distinction or make that decision at our next board meeting.
I think there's also the issue that, and I'm not saying this is true locally, but that some doctors in California okayed the use of cannabis for medical conditions without really checking people out, just sort of giving them the medical. And so there's that issue also, that some people maybe have a medical
Yeah, almost anybody can
need
get a
for
medical.
cannabis that's not really been checked out medically, so.
There are other provisions to this particular policy. As an example, regardless of, even if we chose option 1 and allowed the administration does not include vaping or smoking. So it's only other forms of this that don't include vaping or smoking. So there are still some significant restrictions associated even with the administration of the medication. But I tend to agree with you, Jean. But we'll see. Please do your due diligence research so that you're prepared to make a decision on this next board meeting before we adopt the policy. We are, unless there's any further discussion on item N. Item O.
Oh,
I don't know if you want to address it.
You got to talk louder.
You have a hand raised. I don't know if you want to address it.
We are outside of public comment, so no, I appreciate not. We're at item O, discussion of Gamut online meetings.
All right, so Rochelle attended sort of their introduction, not really their training on it, but just sort of here's the broad scope of the Gamut online meetings. We're hoping to make that transition in the next couple of months here to that, but we will run at least 1 month where we're doing the traditional method as well as showing you here, and here's what that looks like on Gamut, so that we're not just pulling the rug out from underneath everyone and how they're used to seeing the agenda presented. The nice part with this is it will have, you click on the item and here's the associated materials all electronically, and then you move to the next item and you just kind of go down that way. So it's much easier to navigate on an iPad or something like that than a big packet that's just one huge document. I think it's a great product. I think it really helps with communication that way and is really clear about what item attaches or what attachment goes with which item, the explanations behind that. It's all kind of one nice page for each item as you move through. So I think it'll be a really great communication tool internally, but also with our public as well.
Is there a printed version of it as well? So
Yes, we can generate with the click of a button a full printed version. So those of us who still like to have the paper and be able to hold on to that, will be able to do that as well.
Very good.
Yeah, I find that I just don't read things as well digitally as I do a hard copy. I skim it when it's digital, and to try to read in depth digitally is, I don't know if it's my age or what, but I find it very difficult. And it really helps me a lot to have a hard copy to digest what's in front of me, so.
I like the hard copy for making notes. I like the
Yes.
digital copy because I can expand it to the size that it's easy reading for me. Because as these eyes get older, the print seems to get smaller. So, okay, we are at items for the next agenda.
At this point, I don't necessarily have any. We'll be bringing the policy back around.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
I'll
And
second.
Jeannie's going to second it. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.